Well, and one of the national conversations that's going on sort of behind the scenes, and there are universities that have actually jumped on, is to have a test that is given to all collegiate graduates during their junior year that will demonstrate their learning. Okay, yeah, I was going to say. I don't know about the rest of you, but that just sort of makes the hackles on my back go. I mean, there's nothing positive about that concept there at all for me whatsoever, especially because we work with adults. And I don't know, I mean, at least many of my adults are pretty test phobic, okay? They really, that concept of sitting down to a written test is not something that they're very comfortable with. Can you imagine if you say, come back to college, and oh, by the way, in a couple years when you get to 65, 70 credits, we're going to sit you down for a 2.5-hour competency exam. It would be a good way to decrease our enrollments. We will not get more students graduating from college, I don't think, in that process. But there is a conversation about, well, maybe that would be the best way to determine whether students are learning and have a comparison. All right, so let's go on. Assessment is really first and foremost about improving student learning, okay? And I want that to be really sort of center front. I am not saying that it's not about improving teaching, but what I am saying is we really need to think about the goal behind this is how do we ensure that our students are truly learning what they need to do. I loved Huber and Fried's beginning of their article when they talked about the definition of insanity of doing the same thing the same way all the time but expecting different results. You know, and so many times people say, but we've done it this way and it works, but next year it'll be better. The crop of students will be better. The room setup will, you know, anything but how am I doing my teaching, okay, or how are we doing it? So what we want to do is ensure that as we move towards assessment, we have students. And one of the things I strongly recommend for you that it will be worthwhile during the next year that can be done at some point is you need to have those conversations in those programs where there are grads to come back and have them think and review the work that you're doing. So to ask them, here are the outcomes, here are the goals for our program, and here are the learning outcomes that we feel are what we're achieving. Are you getting this? I mean, is this what you feel as an alum of the program you got? Okay? So to have that loop back to see if they can say or recommend or do something else. One of the goals for our program, without a doubt, as our undergraduate programs, is for our students to be able to communicate both written, oral, and critically in multiple ways. And every December, I have a focus group of students that are graduating from the December and those that are scheduled to graduate in May. And I hand out the goals for the university, the learning goals for the university. And I say to them, so tell me, you know, handwrite it down on a scale from 1 to 10, how well we helped you to improve your written, oral communication, et cetera, et cetera. And what was fascinating to us this year in particular, and of course it's been only 1 year that this has happened, so we're going to have to gauge it and see where it was, but they told us we didn't do a very good job with oral communication. And as we started to go back and have a conversation with our faculty, it was interesting the presumption that we were making, that many of them were making, that because they're adults, they would be good at oral communication. Or in actuality, when they're fearful of it, it's so much larger. And so the question becomes, do we have enough built into our program? Are we asking the students enough times to orally communicate? We're doing it online, we're doing it accelerated, we're doing it face-to-face, and guess what's going by the by? Oral communication, because it takes time to have people to stand up and do that. And so we had a conversation within the assessment group when we got this information, and we actually then had it substantiated in a student engagement survey that we do. And what we decided to do, and actually what we're offering come this fall, will be a brand new upper level course that's an elective on communication, on oral communication, for those students that feel that they want more time or need more time. But we can also, as advisors, recommend that our students go into that. That was one of those aha moments that we've had in the last, 5-6 years of assessment, that we all sort of went, really? Okay, that wasn't exactly what we thought we were going to get. And so it was an interesting conversation and an interesting process, but it is about the student learning. So now how do we adjust, and what do we do with that?
Emily, I have something to add to that piece.
Mm-hmm.
I think that students need to also learn how to work in groups.
Oh, I agree.
Teams, because they're going to be getting out in the workforce, and if they're always working on their own,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to be able to work with teams. I mean, what if there's somebody in the team that you need to get them to participate and they're not? How do you do that tactfully?
Right. And so if that's a goal of your program, you've got to figure out where are you doing that. Okay? So if it's a goal, if that's something we want them to gain, then we have to figure out where in our program they're getting that, and where they're not just getting it once, but where they're getting a chance to practice it multiple times in order that they can become the expert at it that we want them to be when they go. Okay? And so that's where it becomes important, is to have those kinds of conversation about what do we want the students to be able to get? What do we want them to achieve? And then how are we building our programs based on that? The other thing is that I think it's important to understand is that it really does force you to think about it in the pedagogical way, about what can we do in our classes, in the individual courses, that will help students expand their learning, and make sure that it isn't just developing or competent, but that they actually get to that next piece. Understand that a lot of this is time for reflection on your part, on thinking about really that. We're going to get to some of that hard conversation later, but you really have to think about really what are we trying to achieve? What is important to us? You can't measure it all. And so you really have to say what are the most important things that we're going to measure? And then how are we going to measure it, and how are we going to look at it?